Republican Paul Ryan served in Congress for more than 20 years, ran for vice president, and until 6 months ago was Speaker of the House. He walked away from all that last year when he chose not to seek re-election. Now he's a private citizen who comments very rarely about politics. Judy Woodruff had a chance to speak with him last night at the Aspen Ideas Festival in Colorado.
Where are Americans right now in terms of how they think about politics and how they think about government?
Extremely polarized. So if you turn on the TV, or if you especially look at Twitter, you're going to pull your hair out. But if you look underneath that, or what I always try to tell our members is, don't pay attention to all the white noise. Do your work. Things, for the most part, still get done. The system still works. The checks and balances do work.
And let's talk about economically. I mean, where do you see us right now as a country? How strong is the economy?
That's what I feel good about. So look at our growth rates. Wages are at the fastest growth rate they've been in 10 years. We got great productivity. We have more job openings in America than people looking for jobs in America. People are getting out of college and getting good jobs. So we've got low inflation, fast economic growth, and the kind of growth we were looking for when we did tax reform gets us the kind of productivity increases we wanted.
But in terms of the economy, for President Trump, for the Republicans up for re-election, how important is it that growth, I mean, what difference does it make whether growth is 3%, as you said, or what if it were 1% or 1.5%?
It's huge. The economy has a great deal to determine whether or not a person gets reelected as president of the United States. That's why I actually think it's Trump's to lose, because of the economy, because of how good the economy is doing. And more importantly, it's the economy in sectors or in parts of our society that haven't seen growth.
And let's talk about trade for a minute. President Trump's signature issue. This has become, I mean, is now the Republican Party the protectionist party?
I hope not. I think if you stand still in trade, you'll fall behind, because other countries will go out and get better trade agreements between themselves, and we'll lose markets. The president and I have not agreed on a lot of these issues. I didn't want to pick fights with our allies like North America and Canada, but I absolutely agree with his decision on China. That is one where I always believed that's a fight we need to fight, because they're not playing by the rules.
The president has focused a massive amount of attention on immigration. Is the GOP now the anti-immigration party?
No, it's not. There's a legitimate problem on the southern border, no two ways about it. Absolutely a serious problem. But we also have an utterly broken system. We have these per country caps. Indians are waiting for like 30 years to get green cards, and it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So if we can get this immigration issue fixed, then I think we're going to be in really good shape.
You now have, what, families coming across the border in record numbers. We are reading these heartbreaking stories every day, practically, about children separated from their parents, some of them in terrible conditions. I mean, how can this be happening in the United States of America?
We need to change our asylum laws. They give a perverse incentive that if you can just come over and say the right thing, then you can come into the country. So there really isn't an effectual border. So we need to tighten up these asylum laws.
I want to ask you about the Republican Party some more. When you were getting into politics, there was this, you've alluded to this really fierce debate going on in the Republican Party between being inclusive and not being inclusive. Has the not inclusive side won? I mean,
there's different labels you can throw around here, but aspirational inclusive politics is not winning the day these days. But I'd say this is happening on both sides of the aisle. What I fear is occurring here is we have what I call these entertainment wings of our parties. And you know what I'm talking about? So you have the entertainment wings, which you can make a lot of money. A person can make a lot of money on polarization. I don't see hopeful, inclusive politics. I see people kind of angry running for office, and that to me is something that we're going to have to try and hopefully change.
Well, I was going to ask you about this later, but does that explain why Joe Biden is leading in the polls?
I think he is the one exception. He is the only one who is kind of running what I'd call a centrist type of campaign, and all the other ones are running hard to the left. And I think that's going to help the president, frankly. And Joe's going to get hit from both sides. And whether he can endure and stick onto that for a year and a half is anybody's guess. The president, this is why I think it's his to lose. He's got this great economy. He's got this great record of accomplishment underneath him.
Why haven't more Republicans stood up to President Trump when they disagreed with him?
He and I had plenty of arguments over the phone, in person, over lots of issues. And I found, actually, I think he appreciated. Then when he didn't read about it in the paper the next day, I think he appreciated it, and I think it was more successful. So I think a lot of Republicans have kind of learned, air your grievances personally and privately, and you'll have a better success at achieving what you're trying to achieve.
How much more disagreement is there with him or with his policies than what we see on the surface?
More than you think.
Is the GOP now clearly the party of Trump?
He's the head of
the party of Donald Trump.
I cannot tell you how many times, just running around America, particularly in Wisconsin, where people who really didn't participate in politics much at all before said, that guy speaks to me. That guy actually is doing something that's making a difference in my life. So it's guttural, and I know people see, oh my God, this Twitter and the things he said about this person and that person just drives people nuts. What that base Republican voter sees, this guy's not backing down and he's fighting for me.
And setting a good example for children, for the next generation.
I answered your question.
I'm sorry?
I said I answered your question.
The Republican Party was the party of Ronald Reagan for long after he was in office. Is that going to be the case with the Republican Party?
I don't know the answer
Is
to that.
Trumpism or whatever?
I think it depends on if he has, I mean, I think it's his to lose, like I said. But if he's the president for 8 years, yeah, that's probably likely the case.
Paul Ryan, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, Judy.